Share via email. Report story. By 7 Rennie. There was a certain feeling about it, a theme park. Never mind the smell of buttered popcorn and cotton candy and funnel cakes, chlorine from water attractions and used wood. It was the noise, and this circus theme park had a lot of it, with screams of both delight and terror, the rumble of roller coaster tracks, the inaudible voice buzzing out of the speakers, the music from multiple rides mixing into one another. Lights. Greens and blues and reds and yellows. The horses on the merry-go-round had long lashes and painted pupils and smooth teeth in their open mouths. Vintage music played after the ring 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 of the starting bell. Normally, if with friends, Ochako would be looking around for the next ride she couldn't wait to get on, or spot a menacing one and debate with herself if she was gutsy enough for this or that. She wasn't doing that tonight. Neither was her date. They were both a fidgety mess. It was clear neither knew what to do on a date. She hadn't prepared this far ahead. Her dilemma had started a week ago. Well, it had started much earlier than that, but that incident at the slumber party in Mina's dorm room had been what got the ball rolling faster. They were talking about boys. Well, Mina and Toru talked about boys while the rest of them commented occasionally. Ochako thought of herself as a talker. In fact, she thought she talked too much sometimes, unable to filter whatever came out of her mouth. But when it came to boys, she kept quiet. She felt as out of place as Kyoka around this topic. Ochako didn't like boys, she liked Izuku. She liked him and couldn't do much about it, at least. She thought she couldn't do anything about it until Suyu casually said, "You like Midoriya, right?" Ochako's denial hadn't been subtle. Mina has quickly smothered her for details. It was hard to be logical when feeling exposed and embarrassed. She went from, "It's not like that," to, he's really determined and thoughtful and tries his best and stopped there because Mina's grin looked dangerous. It was dangerous. The girls, led by Captain Mina, dragged Ochako into a journey she wasn't ever prepared to go on. Mina urged her into confessing, more than once. Ochako floated and rejected the idea, more than once. The girls kept coming up with plans Ochako never picked up. She appreciated the thought, truly. It meant her friends cared. Her friends wanted her to be happy. Even when they joked about how having a massive nerd like Izuku as a boyfriend wouldn't be fun, they still understood Ochako wanted the massive nerd that was Izuku. Their pushiness, however, just made Ochako box in on herself. It wasn't until Suyu told her to take her time and think about it while they were still students that Ochako started nervously considering the possibility of dating. Was it possible to date with such a future career? Would they have the time? Would it even work? How did heroes date? Was Izuku even into her at all? Most likely not. Mina's opinion wasn't fact. Izuku was much too busy getting stronger. It felt like there was no space for anything else. It was logical to just leave things between her and Izuku the way they were. Don't mess with it, it's fine as it was. But, seeing him get along so well with Mei Hatsume, that hadn't felt nice. A selfish thing for her to think. She knew what it felt like to want what others had so easily. But to want a person, that was a dangerous thought, a thought that stuck around like a reoccurring band-aid that hurt to rip off every time. She couldn't sleep at night, her head invaded by what-ifs. What if she never confessed? What if they graduated and they never saw each other after? What if he did have space for a relationship and found someone? What if she never found someone like him, then she heard of him on the news married to someone? What if she regretted never telling him, "I love you"? She weighed her options, then bit the bullet. Mina's previous tips came in handy. Ochako had texted him, A request for him to meet her in the courtyard 2 hours before curfew to discuss something secret. Poor Izuku had looked so serious and nervous, expecting her to deliver something of great importance. In a way, it was. Promoted stories. You'll also like. Return of Mokuden discontinued, 3.5K 45. This story is officially up for adoption. If anyone is interested, message me or comment on the story. Izuku's Harem Academia 183K 1.7 Qst. Read. The Kings and Queen Yandere Wakfu X Reader, 55.3K 1.7 Kyonder. Wakfu X Reader. Images do not belong to me unless stated. Wakfu does not belong to me, it belongs to Enigma. This is being rewritten in another book on my profile. Feelings. Izawa. X Reader 57.1K 1.3 KRE posting. This until I edit it, sorry if it's not good, it's my first time writing a story. You enroll at UA and you have multiple quirks you are really good at using, why? Ohm Fluka Day 112K 8.2 kilo amperes. Collection of short Ohm Fluko for 365 days. Please check the second book for the rest of the day's update. After all, Ohm Fluke 11.3K 802. Will edit once I'm free. N. This is a work of fiction, and any similarity with other works is purely coincidental. Excuse grammatical errors and misspellings, Eng. Convicted Hearts 3390. Like my other story but ILI longer. The I like you, will you go out with me? Had slipped out of her. Her confession had been followed by a minute of confused silence, then Izuku's innocent blank look before his face turned pink and his mouth stammered too many words a second. The longer he took to answer, the more scared she got. She steeled herself and repeated, "Will you go out with me?" In a louder tone. Ah. Yes. He was shaking so badly she feared she broke him. She got her date. She got her date without planning ahead in case he said yes. The confession had taken up such careful planning she hadn't thought of what to do next. Theme parks were good date sites, right? It's what happened in movies. This was her first date. It was his first as well. They hadn't said much throughout the start of the date. It being a date was too in their faces. There was a lot of mumbling and stuttering and blushing. She'd even heard him mumble to himself, "I'm on a date with Uraraka. Is this a dream?" It was endearing. Awkward, but cute nonetheless. It became less awkward after she took his hand and guided him toward a teacup ride. Turns out, they just had to put aside the thought of it being a date and just have fun like they always did together. Forget that it's a date. Just be with him. You'll never know if you'll get a second date with him. This'll probably be your first and only date with him. If so, it's okay. You got to enjoy having your first date with him. Just enjoy the moment. That train of thought seemed to work for the most part. They got on a two-seater mini roller coaster and got a picture out of it, followed by a Ferris wheel when it started getting dark out and stars began shimmering above. She only remembered it was supposed to be a date when they stopped for ice cream and saw the heart-shaped card on a toothpick sticking out of the scoop, reading, "Sweet Love." She automatically looked at his face and saw him looking back with the same confused expression as hers. Realization settled in and they both looked away flustered. Damn it, it was going so well, too. "Hey," he stuttered out after they found a bench to rest on, I really had fun today." "Really?" she asked nervously, because she had been worried. Worried he said yes only because he was her best friend and he didn't want her to be sad in case he said no. He gave a tiny nod, his freckles almost blending with the blushing of his cheeks. "I've never been on a date before. I'm sorry if I don't know how to treat you. I am happy, it was really fun and I He swallowed thickly. I'd like to learn. If it's okay with you. I'd like. He breathed in deeply and shut his eyes. I'd like to go on another date. If you want. If you're okay with that. You don't have to if you don't want to. I'd like that. He halted, almost not believing he'd heard her right. Realization dawned on him and his mouth fell open. He looked ridiculous. It was too funny. She couldn't help but ugly laugh. It was a good date after all. Izuku aced the milk bottle throw. Those heavily weighted metal bottles, while more durable and heavier than they looked, stood no match for Izuku's tuned arm. He got her a palm-sized 13 plush toy with a key clip on the top. He didn't do so well at the ring toss game. That was her specialty. She was used to judging where things might fall. She got him a mini All Might out of that. He probably had a lot of those. He looked happy nonetheless. Theme park games were pretty much scams. Her daddy taught her all about it and which ones were impossible to win at. But it wasn't about the game. She just wanted to have fun tonight. Screw whatever happened tomorrow. How the girls would react to her going on a date without their knowledge, or how difficult the next test would be, or how this date might change how Izuku saw her. Just have fun. This was how most kids their age had fun. And she was having the time of her life. She hoped Izuku was, too. It was getting dark. More colorful lights turned on to light the way. It was getting close to curfew hours. They'd need to get to the dorms later. One ride. Just one. One more thing to remember for the night. She didn't want to go home just yet. It was a wonderful night she didn't want to end. It could have been a dream for all she knew, and going back would mean waking up and realizing this was all a dream and none of it had happened. Izuku saw her looking up. He followed her line of sight, read the sign, Cave of Love, remembered it was a date, and madly blushed. What was she doing? This was Izuku's first date with her and she was dragging him into a romantic ride he probably didn't have interest in. Didn't couples cuddle and kiss on those kinds of rides? She was being selfish. She knew she was a selfish person the moment her heart began to hurt seeing him happy with another girl. She was too selfish. Selfish enough to drag Izuku out here with her for her own happiness, all because she didn't want to go home and face reality. They should just go home. Hey, he said, suddenly grabbing her hand. The hand touch was so sudden Ochako froze, feeling her spine go tight. Let's go in, he said with such determination she was sure he was holding himself steady just to say that. She felt the uncertainty in his hand that transferred into hers. He was nervous but kept it together for her. She looked at their hands, at his face, then back to their hands, feeling him grip tighter with anxiety the longer she took to answer him. Just her and Izuku, in the dark, on a boat, in a tunnel where so many couples had kissed. She finally blurted out, yes, as if answering for both him and herself. The waiting line smelled like a pool, understandable considering the artificial river and the churning water. It looked to be jungle-themed from the outside, with trees in a painted background of a wet forest, a mechanical elephant that flapped its ears and sprayed water out of its trunk at the people in the waiting like, decorative giant tree roots that parted in the middle where the tunnel was, and a giant snake sculpture tangled up in the roots. They tried to keep to small talk, lessen the awkwardness. The topic shifted from schoolwork to, well, whatever this was. Hey, Deku, yeah, what are we? She wasn't sure where they stood. It was a date, yes. She'd told him she liked him, yes. But he hadn't said much back. She could only gather that he was amazed she'd even asked him out, if the words between his mumbling were anything to go by. He was obviously very confused. By the way his brows pinched, probably overthinking, too. She couldn't help but chuckle a little. I mean, are we still just best friends? Or are we? You know. I don't mind being friends, you're a really great friend, it's just, can we be more? Are we more? She was saying it all wrong. Is it? Is it okay for us to be more? Why couldn't she put her words in the correct way? Why did it all spill out so unfiltered and messy and just ridiculous? Why couldn't she time this right? Why couldn't she do anything right? He'd asked for a second date. That was something, right? Or was she jumping the gun? Did they need to date a few more times before they officially became a thing? How did this work? He was taking too long to answer. Granted, it looked like he was mentally crashing. She couldn't blame him. She couldn't even get herself to say girlfriend or boyfriend or a couple. His mouth opened and closed and opened and nothing but a mouse squeak came out. She felt herself panic. Maybe it was best to tell him he shouldn't answer now before she could say anything. A finger tapped her on the shoulder. "Excuse me, dearies," an old lady's voice said. "Hate to bother you two on your lovely night." The woman was a bit on the chubby side. Her partner, a bald old man, was of the same body type. Both wore rimless glasses. Both had droopy, wrinkly skin and hunched backs. Whatever hair they had was ghostly white. Their hands clasped. An old couple, probably in their 70s or 80s. They smiled and their face wrinkles folded even more. Hey, Izuku managed, taken aback by the sudden interruption. The old man said, "You wouldn't mind if my wife and I go in front of you. Family will pick us up soon, and we don't want them to wait. We'll understand if that's too much." Ochako and Izuku looked at each other, quickly figured out what the other's answer would be, and turned to the old couple. "We don't mind," Izuku said. "Go ahead," Ochako said at the same time. They both parted to make room for the couple to pass through. "Oh, thank you," the woman said gratefully. "What lovely children you are," the man said, his voice worn out with age. "Much appreciated. We take this ride every year. It's an anniversary thing, you see." The older one shut down. "Been taking this one recently. Just as special. Haven't missed it once. Been doing this over 40 years. We've used a real boat if other places are closed. Can't go 1 year without one boat ride. It's our special thing." Izuku looked amazed. 40 years. Wow, that's a long time together. Ochako said her thoughts out loud. 40 years with a loved one. The woman chuckled. "Doesn't feel like 40 years now, does it?" she asked her husband. "Certainly not. Feels like it was only yesterday I asked you out to dinner the first time." "You were a shaky thing, you were." The woman laughed a granny laugh. "I was nervous out of my mind. I kept thinking, what's she gonna say? How am I gonna face her next day if she says no? You didn't answer right away. I honestly thought, that's it, I screwed up, it's all over." The woman laughed and grabbed at his arm to hold herself upright. "I was asked out before. Just never thought this handsome man would come for me. Don't blame a lady for being a little shocked her crush asked her out. Had to dig my way out of my own head cause there was plenty going on up here." She tapped her temple. I don't have patience, you know that now." "Oh, you very much don't." Ochako watched them laugh about the past. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Izuku lift a hand to pinch his chin. He was thinking. He did that whenever a lot suddenly squeezed into his mind. His eyes, though not looking directly at anything, seemed to catch onto something. Sometimes Ochako wanted to see how his mind worked. The man cleared his throat. "Pardon my hearing aid. You two are quite new to each other, aren't you? Unless these ears ain't doing much better with these here aids." Both Ochako and Izuku stuttered. "Ah, well, it's not that. We're classmates. Yeah, we know each other. Just on a date." The old woman laughed. "We can tell. Things are a bit wobbly when you're just figuring out your footing." A yellow boat bobbed to a stop. The gate creaked open by an employee. "That's our ride," said the old man. "You two enjoy yourselves." He looked at Izuku with his tiny eyes and patted Izuku on the shoulder. You be a gentleman, now, you hear? I, I will. You behave yourself, too, Missy. The woman looked at Ochako. She lifted a hand to cover the side of her mouth and whisper a secret, and you keep an eye on that young man feels like a heap of trouble, he is boys are like that. Cute but all trouble, especially Bambi eyes, here. I ain't an expert on young men, but I advise you look for a boy with a bit of manliness on him, bit of self-thinking. Young men with little to say are heavy to carry around. Not judging your taste, of course. Just an observation from dear Granny here. In any case, you have fun tonight, alright? Alright. It took Ochako a few moments to process what she'd heard. Izuku must have not heard, because he leaned in front of her face to check the blank look in her eyes. Had that kind old lady just insulted Izuku? Had her intentions been to insult him that way? Her so-called advice had Ochako miffed. What did the old lady know about Izuku, anyway? She didn't know him. That was incredibly rude, judging Izuku like that. Izuku was charming in his own way. Selfless and brave and determined, things Ochako admired and sought to be. It wasn't his fault neither he nor Ochako knew what they were doing when it came to romance. It didn't mean he wasn't enough to be a good boyfriend. This was the talk at the girls' slumber party all over again. Saying things like, Midoriya, he's kind of a big nerd, isn't he? Dating him would be weird. Yeah, I guess he's too much of a fanboy. Not really boyfriend material. It didn't make sense how everyone criticized him when Ochako was also unsure of how to be a proper lover. She'd never expected romance to be involved in her life. He probably hadn't either. Uraraka, Izuku called with concern, waving a hand in front of her face. Are you okay? Did she say something weird to you? She blinked. How long had she been ranting in her head? Sorry, was just thinking. She tried to laugh it off. He still looked concerned. Another boat bobbed into place just as the old couple's boat disappeared into the tunnel. They got in the boat had no safety handles to pull down, just a waist belt similar to ones inside cars. It wasn't exactly a thrill ride, just a boat going through a black, damp tunnel. The boat's edges bumped against the tight corners. The splashing echoed through the tunnel. They didn't say much for the most part. She kept thinking about what the old woman had said to her. It didn't make sense. The elderly were supposed to be wise. That hadn't sounded very wise. Or maybe Ochako was too nervous that the woman was right. She couldn't be right. The woman didn't know Izuku. She judged him from the few minutes Ochako and him waited in line. Uraraka, Izuku's voice echoed. Yeah, she couldn't really see him. It was pitch black in here. Dark enough for couples to have some privacy to cuddle and kiss. She and Izuku did none of that. Maybe it really wasn't meant to be. It wasn't that Izuku wasn't right, Ochako was the one at fault. She just couldn't reach his level of greatness. If there's anything bothering you, you can talk to me about it, okay? And just like that, the reasons why she loved him presented themselves. He was too good for her. That was the problem. That was the imbalance. Thanks. Just a lot to think about. Sorry if I soured the mood. Oh, no, no, you didn't. Actually, I wanted to apologize. Apologize? She asked, puzzled. For what? For not being good to you. I know I'm really bad at this sort of thing. I do like you, Uraraka. I promise, I do. She forgot to breathe. He said it, he really said it, this couldn't be real. This whole date had to be a dream. She wanted to act as if he was real. Doing that would interrupt him. It sounded like he was struggling to put feelings into words. She stayed quiet. He kept going. I don't know what to do, how to treat you right, what I have to say. I don't know how to be a good boyfriend. I've never had a girl like me before. I never thought someone would ever like me like that. I spent more time trying to convince myself this isn't a dream when I should have been trying to be better to you. I'm sorry if it didn't turn out as romantic. I'll try harder next time, if you're okay with a next time, I mean. I'd understand if you changed your mind. Deku. She smiled even though she knew he couldn't see. I get it, I understand. I'm kinda trying, too. Let's learn together, okay? Yeah, he said with relief after a few seconds of silence. Okay. Blackness parted and yellow light stabbed at their eyes. The indoor jungle was loud with chatty birds from speakers and the artificial churning of water beneath. Ochako found his face a bit too close. She quickly looked away the same time he did. After a moment, they looked back, and she couldn't help the embarrassed giggle that came out of her. She tucked a hair strand behind her ear. He gave an awkward chuckle as well, silently agreeing they were being ridiculous. Long grass tilted down at them from the sides. Two robotic monkeys laughed, their tails intertwined in a heart shape. Robotic elephants with flapping ears held trunks. The roof lights suddenly dimmed, now being lit by shallow blue lights and stars in the sky. The noisy birds turned into lazily hooting owls. It wasn't long before they entered a second tunnel. Hey, Deku, yeah, I really did have fun today. Awkward didn't mean bad, awkward was them. I'm glad, he really did sound grateful. Something bumped the boat in the dark. They both yelped and grabbed at the side. The boat wobbled from right to left. For a second or two, Ochako almost wanted to laugh off this river bump. On the third second, when the boat suddenly sped up as if being swallowed by a whale in the dark, followed by rushing of fast water, fear struck her. A drop, Izuku yelped beside her. A clap of his shoe against the floor of the boat hinted that he was getting ready for whatever was coming. I thought it was a slow ride. Ochako managed to yell before the boat did a full spin, indicating there were no tunnel walls around them anymore. She clutched at her waist belt, keeping her thumb up so as to not mess with the ride, and pressed herself to the seat. It kept spinning, twice, 3 times, picking up speed. Water splashed at them. Wearing short socks, she was aware of the cold water running down her calf. But when she lifted a leg and stomped it back down, she felt the plop and the resistance. The boat was filling up, everything was happening too fast for her to question if this was meant to happen. Wind rushed at their faces like a cold slap. Blackness lightened to dark blue. The rushing foam was visible for a brief second before air was suddenly swallowed away their yells, and their stomachs lifted. She knew this feeling. The feeling of not having gravity, the feeling of canceling gravity, the feeling of falling. She knew how things were supposed to fall for them to fall correctly, with controlled purpose. This boat did not have control. It dropped leaning toward Izuku's side. It was tilting too hard in that direction, almost tipping over. She'd never seen a two-seat boat ride do that. This fall wasn't correct. It didn't even correct itself. The boat hit the water hard and sank, taking Izuku and Ochako down with it. It had slammed the water so hard it felt like hitting solid ground. This wasn't a ride anymore. Whatever it was, they didn't plan to sit and drown in it. It was hard to think when underwater and breathing in bubbly air. Her thinking had been knocked back from that fall. The boat was still moving forward through rapids, upside down. She felt Izuku's firm hand grab at her belt and snap it with a quick yank. Now free from being attached to the ride, Ochako slapped the wood, floating it off of them. She kicked her legs and reached for the bubbly surface, bursting out in coughing fits, her lungs greedily taking in large gulps of air. Uraraka. Izuku's strangled yell came from a few feet back. The rapids were taking her lighter body away from him. He was trying to swim and reach out to her at the same time. A black line of mist burst out of her wrist and wrapped around her middle. Another black whip shot out to snag at the closest tree branch. He dragged them to the safety of cold mud and wet moss, coughing and dripping and shaking. Uraraka, I'm okay. She stood, slipped on mud, righted herself, leaning against her knees. I'm okay. What? What happened? Casual clothes clinging to him, Izuku stood on wobbly legs and squelched through mud. I, he coughed. I think we went off the track. The boat Ochako had floated was still slowly spinning in midair, its side split open from the impact of falling, its underside, mechanical contraptions and waterproof parts of a pulley system, exposed. How? Ochako asked. This didn't make sense. An old ride breaking was possible, but this was a theme park in the middle of a city. They hadn't gone up for them to go down. Where did they find a mini waterfall so eerily quiet? Come to think of it. Hey, where are we? Cicadas buzzed. Water vapor danced over the river. Black thick trees surrounded them. No human talk. No theme park music. She and Izuku locked eyes. She could barely see him with how dark it was, but she could make out the stunned look on his face. He thought for a moment, then gave a determined huff. I'll take a look. Let me just. He stepped away from the river until he found solid, dry ground. Turquoise electricity sparked down his limbs and torso and he squatted low. Ochako figured out what he was doing. Oh, good idea. Izuku catapulted himself into the sky, spraying a ring of dust and dead leaves around and flicking off the water which had been clinging to his clothes. He was a sparkling dot in the sky, almost blending in with the stars. He came down with a loud thump. The landing impact gave him a bit of a bounce before he caught himself. He froze in place, his eyes wide open. What is it? Ochako asked anxiously, her hands in fists, a habit she did whenever stressed or excited. What did you see, Deku? His blank stare was scaring her. It's all trees, he said, his voice barely above a whisper as though he couldn't believe what he'd seen with his own eyes. He turned around and tried again, intending on getting a full overview even from behind. He came back from the sky and had the same answer. It's a real forest. It's too dark, it's hard to see, but I think someone took us elsewhere. Teleportation. Unless this ride had layers that somehow crossed legal restrictions, it had to have been someone's quirk. Gone was the euphoria of delight. This felt like the forest training incident all over again. There was no cave or portal of any kind above the waterfall. Izuku had checked. No cave, no abnormalities. No buildings, no signposts or walkways, just trees and boulders and moss and hills and uneven mountains and suspiciously cooler air. It felt like a trap. The boat in itself had been a trap. No one knew where the two of them were. They had no backup. Even they didn't know where they were. If someone were to surround them, they'd be sitting ducks. We have to stick together, Izuku said. They were already almost touching backs, each person covering the other's back. It's hard to see. Be careful. An airy sound that resembled a wing beat came from overhead. A millisecond later, something hard and hand-sized clunked Izuku in the head. Ochako managed to glance up just in time to see a glass-like ring. It reminded her of watery rings on water surfaces after a droplet landed, shrink and disappear. Ochako crouched to Izuku's side. Are you alright? I'm okay, he said, rubbing his head. I think it really was a portal just now, Ochako said. With felt around the tall grass, finding whatever had fallen out of nothingness. Izuku inspected the black, old-fashioned MP3-like device and the attached earpods. No one used MP3s anymore. Ochako leaned in to see the painfully small screen as Izuku thumbed at the hard buttons, just arrows, volume adjustment, a menu button, and a middle button that turned the thing on. As Izuku explored what little was in here, they figured out there was only one audio file that read, for the dear lovers. Dear lovers, Ochako repeated. That sounded familiar. The nice old people, she blurted out. They'd seemed nice enough at the time. They'd asked to go before her and Izuku. Ochako had two possibilities. Either something similar had happened to them, and this was something they were forced to record by someone, or they had something to do with this situation as a whole. One way to find out. Here, Izuku said, presenting her one of the earpods while he tucked the other into his own ear. She held it to her ear, her face cheek pressing against his. She gave a nod for him to hit play. The old woman's voice spoke. Hello, dearies. We're so delighted you made it through. I'm sorry for the rude entrance, could have put you down nicer if my aim was better. My memory isn't what it used to be, you see. Try to remember where we camped and I get pictures of somewhere else. Slight miscalculation on my part, dearies. Hope you two had a lovely ride, not accounting for the latter half of the ride, of course. I'm sure you're wondering where you are. Don't worry about that, looking won't do you any good on an island. It'll be over in a jiffy, soon as you do us a favor. Izuku was stiff next to her. She was just as still. The couple from before were responsible for this. They'd sent them somewhere, if the old lady was telling the truth. They'd possibly asked to go into the tunnel ahead to set up a portal. But why Izuku and her? What favor? Why go through all the trouble of sending two teenagers out here? The old woman asked someone. I haven't told them how we met, haven't I? The old man answered, no, dear. Was a long time ago. I used to date someone else, and love here had someone else, too. Started dating love here, but both of us were still tied down to other people. Things were messy. We wanted each other, but he was with a fool. I did what needed to be done. Conveniently, my fool vanished. Wasn't a problem. I found my real love. It's weird how you think you found love, but then you find out what you had was pretend love after you find the real deal. For a while, I was guilty. His old fool was in the ocean. My old fool was in a cement barrel. She gave a loving laugh, as if receiving a present. Turned out love here took out the old fool for me. You know I'd do anything for you, he said. The old woman laughed a bit, then composed herself, remembering she was recording. Like I said, it's an anniversary thing. His idea was to find fake lovers. Easy people to trick. You have no idea how many fools think they know what love is. It's not a game, but they treated it like it is a waste of compassion, if you ask me. And then there's all the immoral people. The cheap people who can't afford anything because they don't want to admit they didn't try to be good enough for better work, then drag other fools into marriage. Then those people who just say they found love when they want to be dirty with people then leave to be dirty with other people. And then there's all those people, men marrying men and women marrying women and people marrying multiple people. They ruined what was so beautiful. It's a never-ending list, it's awful. Izuku's head slowly turned to Ochako and they locked eyes. She saw the terror on his face. They both understood. They were dealing with deranged serial killers. An anniversary thing, they'd called this. They'd done this many times before. Every year for 40 years. You're far too young to understand, the woman continued in a disappointed tone. It's not your fault the world made you that way. We're fixing that, don't you worry. It might not look much, but it'll help in the long run for kids younger than you. You can't count how many broken marriages we've saved, how many unwanted children and broken hearts we saved. When people think they love each other but don't, it can be a real problem for everyone. Some people just don't deserve to be loved. We hate to do this to people as young as you, but there's no helping it. I tried nipping it on the bud, I did, but youngsters are stubborn. Teenagers think they're already all grown up and don't want to listen. Love here wants a favor from you. One of you can go home after. Do him this one favor and one of you gets to go home. This is for your own good, I promise. You can't say no, he's already got you. Tap the dear boy on the arm, he did. Put his quirk on him. A little switch love hasn't flipped yet. The last word sunk in. Izuku immediately began patting himself, his arms and shoulders, his back. Ochako tugged at his collar to check for anything out of the ordinary. Nothing. She kept searching down the collar of his back while the recording was still playing. Anything? Izuku asked, clearly disturbed. No, tug your sleeves up. Never mind how inappropriate this looked. Some serial killer had placed something on her friend. She wasn't even sure what she was supposed to be looking for. A mark, a device. Don't bother looking. You won't find a thing, the old man said. It was a recording. He already knew they'd look. No point looking for what you can't find. Been doing this for years. Nobody's gotten out of this before. Either both fools die or one's dead and the other's too numb to be of much help with police and get themselves arrested instead. You'll get what I mean later. Oh, and voice player's the type that'll go pop when it's done, so you best let go at the end. Daughter's quite tech savvy, been mighty handy covering tracks. When this is all over, we got nothing to do with it, it's all you. No use trying to find a way out of it, it's already over for you too. Don't struggle, that's my favor. It'll end faster. I'm no bad man, believe me. I'm not. I don't do this 'cause I want to. I do it 'cause no one else will. And don't you blame my love here, she just opens them doors from memory. That their island was a getaway place years ago. Me, I just flip a switch, you see. Metaphorical switch. Turns off when the deed's done, so it's not forever. Can only make a fool do one thing, though. You'll see what it is. Oh, and if you're ever hungry or thirsty, there's a cabin downriver from where you are. Can't promise food still edible, but thought I'd let you know. As for now, little boy, little girl. Ochako heard Izuku's shaky exhale next to her ear. Till death do you part. She heard Izuku gasp, as if suddenly being strangled. He dropped the audio player and staggered back, doubling over and hugging his torso. Red lines mapped his body, evaporating into electrical sparks. His jaws clenched, drool lines slipping down the corner of his mouth, his eyes opened wide, his pupils shrinking. It looked as though his own quirk was attacking him. Deku. Ochako crouched next to him, a worrying hand over his back and another on his shoulder. Deku, what's wrong? Where's it hurting? Strangled grunts came out of him. Misty black tendrils wafted up his wrists. The green of his eyes suddenly widened. The black pupils shrunk into nothing, leaving his eyes with no black left in them. Black whip residue climbed up his scrunched up face, grabbing around the corners of his eyes and over the bridge of his nose like sticky tar. He was trembling as if he were being electrocuted. He opened his mouth. No sound came out. He fell over, bending over. The crown of his head thumped the grassy ground, his arms continuing to squeeze his torso, unfolding with difficulty to uselessly grasp at the weeds. Deku, Ochako screeched, her hands all over him. Deku, what's wrong? Can you breathe? Deku, hold on. Deku, she pushed him to the side, successfully toppling him over. He was seizing, his hands open, clawing at the ground, his eyes were wide open, his expression morphing from terror to blankness. She cupped his face, making him look at her. His eyes weren't seeing her. She felt his neck, noting the fast pulse. The black tendrils that drifted out of his shoulders licked the side of her face. They felt like silk. Didn't Black Whip hurt him? He'd told her it hurt to use it. It was coming out of him now without him intending for it to. The blank look on his face, the pupil-less eyes, the unblinking lids, the lack of response, scared her. She was so focused on him, the audio players popping apart and the leftover parts turning into a palm-sized flame did snag her attention away from her friend. She placed her head over his chest to hear his lungs. Before she could get a verdict, something silky and snake-like wrapped around her throat. Black Whip snagged her by the neck and pulled her up and off her feet. Deku. She choked, muddy legs kicking in the air, hands grabbing at the whip strangling her. Through blurring vision, she saw him sit up sluggishly with one arm out, the arm that Black Whip was coming out of. Green blank eyes stared right at her. Something was seriously wrong with him. That wasn't her Izuku. With a flick of his hand, her body painfully jerked to the side before being thrown across the forest floor, hitting uneven rocky ground, bouncing off and rolling a few feet before sliding over cold mud closest to shallow streams of the river. Parts of her body went numb. Pain hadn't hit her just yet. Izuku had just tossed her violently. Deku. Her hands dipped into mud as she lifted herself to sit on her knees. His gait was uneven when he stood up. It was hard to see in the dark, but with the green electrical sparks giving off bits of light, she managed to see the swaying tendrils of Black Whip stretching out and swiping at nothing. The look in his eyes was of silent rage despite the rest of his face being so peaceful. Her still wet body shivered from both the cold and the realization of what was happening. He wordlessly took a battle stance, squatting a little and drawing his fist back. Her heart jumped into her throat. She scrambled to get out of the way, slipping over mud, quickly catching herself and springing out of the way just in time to avoid the air blast that drew a split in the ground and slashed at the river behind. The surrounding pressure sent her flying. She dropped, rolled, skidded to a halt and quickly stood up, only now noticing the blood going down her arm, a cut possibly received from being tossed previously. Deku, snap out of it, she begged of him. They were having fun just moments ago. He'd told her he liked her. He won her a toy. He got her ice cream. And now he looked ready to kill her. Deku, she saw the Black Whip strands rise. Pleading tears spilled out of her. Please. The whips shot out like arrows, aiming for her. She jumped out of the way, dodging each one that struck the earth with force enough to sink into the ground and shake the dirt beneath her. He really was trying to hurt her. This was all wrong. Everything had happened too fast. She had yet to fully gather what was happening and why. In her confusion, she wasn't paying attention. Izuku was in her face while she was mid-jump. Before she could collect her thoughts, his fist collided with her gut and sank in with force. Air was forced out of her, along with a squirt of vomit, liquefied treats they'd had at the park mixed with metallic blood. The world spun. She heard her own heart in her ears, saw only pitch blackness. She flew back quite a distance, her lower half hitting the ground, causing her to spin backward. Her arm smacked against something, a tree, possibly, and her hand came flailing back to hit her in the stomach as she dropped and rolled backward, slowly stopping between trees. Vomit in her throat and nostrils choked her. She lamely turned to her side and immediately regretted moving. Her body curled into a ball in an attempt to ease the pain in her clenching abdomen. She wheezed desperately, gagging on her own vomit, coughing. She shifted and her now tender arm flopped to the ground. That wasn't her Izuku. Even during practice battle, he'd never hurt her like that, like he was trying to cause actual harm. The fact that it had been Izuku to hurt her so much was a whole different kind of pain in itself. No, that wasn't Izuku. He'd never hurt her. She tried to think back to everything that led to this. The old couple. The old woman had a teleportation quirk of some sort. Open doors from memory. Something like that. Portals that opened to what the lady remembers. It seemed to really depend on remembering. The old woman had even said she had remembered wrong when trying to open a portal to bring them here. that her memory wasn't what it used to be. The old man. He'd done something to Izuku. A brainwashing quirk, maybe. He'd changed him, flipped a switch, right after he'd said, "Till death do you part." They'd done this to other people. Only one of them could go home, that's what they'd said. They'd killed other people, had one of the couples kill the other. Till death could they part. I just flip a switch, you see. Metaphorical switch. Turns off when the deed's done, the old man had said. Did, did one of them really need to die for the quirk to turn off? She couldn't let that happen. She couldn't accept this. There had to be another way to snap him out of it. Getting up was difficult with the agony rattling through her body and mind. She was wet, covered in mud and river water and sweat and tears and vomit and smears of blood. Her arm was definitely broken. She knew what a break felt like. Flesh had torn off her knees and upper arm at some point, possibly scraped off by jagged natural rocks. It was hard to tell if her vision came back. It was night in the middle of a bushy forest with the only dim light being the moon past layers of branches. Shapes came into view and faded with every heartbeat. A twig snapped, cradling her broken arm. She turned just in time to see Izuku's wet body charged with electricity. Her being able to see suddenly made sense. He was a light source. He stepped over a branch, the black whip arms wafting out of him, black inky lines painted around his blank eyes like a mask. Aside from the rushing of blood in her ears, the swaying of trees and grass, and the bursting waterfall, it was eerily quiet, which made the thought of dying here, by the hands of her best friend, no less, even more terrifyingly possible. No one was around to stop this. No friends or teachers. No adults. Deku. Her whimper sounded pathetic even to herself. Ear out of one ear. Deku, please wake up. Please. You're not like this. I know you're not. She pleaded, her throat itchy. Deku, you can snap out of it. You did it before. Try it again. Black Whip snagged her by the good arm and lifted her off the ground. Dangling felt like she was getting too close to dislocating her shoulder. He was holding her by her unbroken arm. She looked down and saw him pointing his fist at her, thumb and index fingers in, ready to shoot. He had to remember how he did that. It was probably muscle memory of some sorts. Was he even aware of what was happening to his body? Deku, you're hurting me. He hesitated. His hands were shaking. The blankness in his face was cut by wrinkles when his face scrunched into a snarl. She was too far, and frankly, too dizzy, to see right, but she was almost sure she saw the tiniest dots of pupil struggling to come back in his eyes. Fat tears dribbled down his cheeks. He was conscious. He knew what was happening, what he was doing, what he'd done, what he was about to do. An expression finally morphed on his face, one of dread and guilt. She could almost hear the string of endless words and apologies in his pained look, saying things like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't want to, I'm so sorry. His hand shakily clutched at his arm, the one pointed at her, and shoved it down to aim away from her. The air blast struck the ground, popping a tiny dirt explosion. The dust settled. His blank face was back. His arms had stopped shaking, repositioning to point at her. Her Izuku had given her enough time to toe off a sneaker. She painfully swung forward and kicked the shoe. It hit him a bit higher than intended, on the forehead. It hurt her to hit him. She wanted to say sorry, but it was enough to disorient him. He automatically squinted, his fingers uncurling to touch his face. The shadowy tendril lost strength for a second and let go of her arm. She dropped and, somehow, landed on her feet, wincing from the impact of rough forest twigs against her sock-only foot. She had to give herself time to think. She had to get away from him. She had one broken arm and her body hurt all over. Her mind was still in shock from being yanked out of a peaceful night at an amusement park with her sweet crush and dumped in the middle of a forest on an island with wrinkly old serial killers trying to get her date to murder her. She had to put distance between them. With one last glance at him, he shook off his confusion and redirected his blank gaze at her. She stumbled and ran farther into the forest, yelling, "I'll think of something, Deku, I promise." As she went, he was slow, she noticed. He didn't run. Even when he tossed her and punched her, he took his time, walking at a slow pace, casually stepping over obstacles like he was simply out camping. He probably couldn't run. The quirk's limit was the victim's mobility. It took time for the commands to go through, or Izuku was resisting the commands. Either way, his slowness saved her and Izuku for the moment. He was having his own battle, she was sure. His low speed was both a blessing and a curse. A blessing, because she could put some distance between them, a curse, because she couldn't hear him. It scared her to think he'd be nearby. Scared, she was scared, of Izuku. That was the most gut-wrenching part in this whole mess, Izuku. Sweet, smiley, stuttering Izuku was being used as a killing tool. People were using him to hurt other people, to hurt her, to hurt him as well. Knowing Izuku, he'd never forgive himself for striking her. He'd blame himself to no end. He'd be more concerned he'd hurt her than with the fact villains were using his body as a puppet to do their dirty work and not have blood on their hands. She leaned heavily against a tree trunk, her back thumping against it with exhaustion, and listened to her own breath in her ears. There was intense, eye-popping pressure at the back of her head. Her balance was off, her head and lower back hurt. She still couldn't hear out of one ear. She couldn't fight him like this. Think, Ochako, think. There had to be a way out of this, a way that didn't include either of them losing their lives. The quirk only turned off if the deed was done. Was that really the only way? How would she know if the old man was telling the truth? How would the quirk, a non-sentient power, know if the deed was done? Izuku had broken out of it for a split second. Had that been willpower, or simply the quirk reacting to his mind after he was believing the deed was almost done? Had he imagined himself killing her, thus glitching the command? It was all hypotheses, hypotheses that didn't give her a straight, clear answer. Hypotheses were better than nothing. The distant sound of wood being smashed made her heart quicken. A tree flew overhead, from behind her to a distance in front. He was smashing the forest looking for her. That confirmed a few things. Firstly, that the quirk made him target her specifically, ignoring wildlife. It didn't give him the ability to pinpoint her like a GPS system, however. He didn't know where she was. At least, she assumed he didn't know. Secondly, that the quirk couldn't use Izuku's intellect, or else he would have bounced around and found her by now instead of stripping the forest. Izuku's split-second break out of the quirk's control gave her hope. There was a way. There had to be till death do them part, a lover's promise of commitment. The old couple, based on their recorded speech, targeted lovers they did not approve of lovers. Love had been a word the old couple had said a lot. Now that she put that puzzle piece in, a picture began to form. How did a quirk know which person to target? The quirk victim had to be in love for the quirk to work. Till death do them part. Izuku loved her. The thought made her sob and she cupped a hand over her mouth to stifle the noise. It was one thing to be told he liked her at a cheesy amusement park ride. It was a whole other thing to know he had her in his mind so deeply to the point that a love-specific quirk could take hold. He loved her, and the quirk was driving him to kill who he loved. Love. That was what linked the two targets. That was what made Ochako the quirk's target. Till death do them part. No one needed to die. Not if she could break this, glitch the system, mess with the quirk in her own way. Till the death of love do them part. Izuku was drowning. He reluctantly learned what it felt like to be waterboarded. Naked in a pitch-black room, drowning in inky water, he continued to struggle for what felt like hours, his hands reaching up for the surface. He was drowning for however long he'd been in here, and yet, he was not dead. He kicked through thick liquid but hardly went up an inch at the far back of his mind. He saw faded pictures of what his body was seeing, his fist colliding with Ochako's stomach and making her vomit a mixture of stomach juices and blood. He'd screamed in anguish and saw the bubbles ride out of his mouth and drift upward, but the pictures didn't listen. He screamed and kicked and cried and clawed at his face and screamed, "Stop! Stop it! Please, stop! Don't hurt her! Don't! Let her go! Let her go! Damn it, let her go! Uraraka, I'm sorry. Run! Please, run away!" He begged through a shredded throat. His words turned into bubbles he saw float away to the surface he was so desperately trying to reach. He watched the faded pictures of Black Whip holding her up by the arm, and his hand positioned to aim at her face, and he felt it at the back of his mind, that his possessed body was trying to figure out how hard to hit Ochako and deal the most damage without hurting itself in the process. She was going to die. He was going to kill her with his own hands. He imagined the horrifying future of him caving in her skull with a blast of pressurized air. A dry wail ripped out of him and his reaching hand broke through the surface. He wasn't sure how, but he battled to take back his body, only managing to lower the weapon and unload it to the ground before the water level rose again, sinking him completely. His tears were visible as tiny clear bubbles, wobbly and innocent and floating among the pitch-black water that was not water. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. He had to tell her to run, to get away from him. He had to tell her he was so sorry, that he was trying, that he'd never ever hurt her. But he'd hurt her. He'd hurt her and it was by his own hands. He'd never forgive himself. Damn it, I'm sorry. Please get away from me. I'll try everything to stop it, I promise. I'll keep trying. I'll figure it out. Please, just keep running. Run away from me. Stay safe. Even when he couldn't see her anymore after she disappeared deeper into the forest, he couldn't stop thinking how badly he'd hurt her. He tossed her and broke her arm and made her bleed and struck fear into her, and it was all his goddamn fault. He'd tear his heart out if he couldn't stop it. He'd gone from being asked out by Ochako herself to punching her in the gut so hard he couldn't stop thinking he'd caused a substantial amount of internal damage. For a while, he didn't see her. His body overused Black Whip and tore at the forest in search. She wasn't around, hiding or still running. She was too injured to get too far. He didn't want to believe she was nearby. It was hard to think when choking on thicker than normal water that hinged his throat open, stretching his muscles beyond their capability, wanting to tear him open from the inside. It hurt. By God, it hurt. He was tearing apart. He was tearing and he didn't care, because if he did, then he'd stop kicking. It was dark up high, but it was much darker down there. He didn't know if he'd be able to kick his way up again if he sank down there. if he'd be there to yank his body away from Ochako. He'd hurt her. He'd hurt her badly. His body was still looking to hurt her again, and Izuku could only kick and go nowhere like the useless, worthless deadweight he was. Deku. Horror struck him like an arrow. His body, the one he no longer owned, stopped slashing at trees and slowly turned to look at Ochako, standing with a stiff back and one eye half closed, her mouth open and panting painfully as if each gasp hurt. Her legs had thin streaks of dried blood running down her knees from torn flesh stained with dried mud and dead leaves. Her limp arm was purple and swollen at the elbow where it had been forced to bend the wrong way after slamming into a tree. No, 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 no. Run. Please, run, Uraraka. You have to run. He pleaded with no voice. She held her ground. You're being a big bully, she yelled at him through a scratchy voice. You're a bully, Deku. Stop being a meanie, Uraraka. Please, run, I'm dangerous. His body readied Black Whip. No, stop. Don't you hurt her. Uraraka, get away, hurry. She didn't. Black Whip attacked, a tentacle aiming for her. Izuku screamed as it roughly grabbed her midsection and squeezed her. He instinctively knew it was going to smash her into the ground. A silent scream ripped out of him as he fought to keep it from doing so. His body suddenly lifted a few inches off the ground. Ochako had floated it. She touched the smoky arm around her midsection. Black Whip was still physically attached to his body. His puppet body was weightless. She was not. She landed on her feet on the ground and immediately began running, pulling his disoriented body with her, smacking it against brush in her hurry. He sensed his body prepared to strike with another strand of Black Whip. Uraraka, watch out, he warned, clawing at the black water, trying to pull himself back into his body with no little success, only managing to tilt the aim to the side. It struck the ground and missed Ochako by an inch. Air from the downward swing knocked Ochako off her feet. She dropped, rolled, skidded to a stop in a crouched position, her limp arm smacking around and landing on the ground, palm facing up. She was wheezing. That dodge had knocked out her already small breaths. You're not my Deku, she said, crying, hiccuping. You're not nice. Why can't you be nice to me? You're nice to everybody else, why not me? Why don't you love me? I do. I do love you. Why do you make me worry so much? Don't you care? You keep hurting yourself. You never think I don't worry. That you keep secrets and I'm watching and hoping you'd tell me what's wrong. I want to know if you're okay, but you don't want me to know when you're okay. You never come to me. She was crying, her short breath hitching, her good arm clutching at her chest. You go to All Might. You even go to Bakugo. You never come to me and it hurts that you don't trust me. I do trust you. I do. I'm sorry I couldn't be better. I don't like how I get when you're with other girls. I hate that it makes me dumb and say stupid things, because I like Deku but Deku doesn't like me back. I know you don't. I know you said yes just because I asked you and I can't help it, but I know you'd say yes if it was someone else. No, I said yes because I wanted to, Uraraka. Please, believe me, I did. I couldn't believe it when you asked me. I thought my heart was going to burst out. I'm not enough. I know I'm not enough. I don't know what I have to do to be enough for Deku. I don't know what I have to do. I can't understand why. Why are other people enough, but I'm not? You are, Uraraka. You're more than enough and so much more. Please don't think like that. I'm sorry I'm making you cry. I'm sorry I'm the reason you're crying. Deku's a dummy. I hate you. His body had readied a fist, preparing an airy punch that would no doubt break ribs if he hadn't broken them already. Uraraka. Uraraka, please move. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. She screamed, fat tears dribbling down her dirt cheeks. Please move. I can't stop it. I'm trying. He kept drowning. It's not working. Please, get away. I hate you, Deku. It sounded like it hurt her to say that. His body took a step back, planting a foot against the dirt, a position that meant he was going to swing. She hated him and it didn't matter. He'd still swing, because no matter how much she hated him, he still loved her. He loved her. That was enough for the quirk to keep holding on to his body. Don't. Seconds before his fist swung, her good arm moved for her hand to touch her limp one before her body leaned to one side in an effort to dodge. A noise from above, the sound of cracking wood, caused Izuku's body to swing a fist and eyes tilt up at the same time. A tree came down, one of the ones he'd ripped up before. It smashed just behind his body. Ochako had placed him just in front of where it would crash into a blinding explosion of dust that made it even harder to see in the dark. Air blasted out of his fist, throwing him back against the tree. The air bullet flew in the dark, hitting everything in its path and leaning trees back. Uraraka, she had to have dodged. She had to. His body took its sweet time getting out of the spiky indent in the bark it had created upon slamming into the tree trunk. It scanned the area, waiting for the dust to settle, spotting clothes on the ground. It stepped toward her limp body. It was going to finish the job. No, Uraraka, run. Please, run. I can't stop it. Please, get up. Please don't stay down. Uraraka. She was on her stomach, not moving, a thin blanket of dirt over her. His puppet body stood over her, waiting. Izuku could only watch in horror, seeing her not move. He searched for the tiniest of movements, found none. He almost forgot to swim when his body gave hers a disrespectful nudge with his shoe to turn her over. Her head flopped to the side, mouth and nose and shirt dark with blood and dirt. Uraraka. His body waited for any movement, any sign that would indicate the deed hadn't been complete. It nudged her with a shoe to her side. Stop. Please, stop. Black Whip caressed her cheek. She didn't react. No blinking. No brow twitching. No. No 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 no. Black Whip slowly retreated into his body, satisfied. Vibrations ripped through him. He could breathe again, though it wasn't worth it. There was a rattling in his head, it was his own screaming. A guttural cry he couldn't control. He was back in his body, suddenly able to hear normally. His legs buckled and his knees thumped the ground. He fell to his hands, clawing at moist dirt, digging soil beneath his nails, his mouth hinged open, screaming, his face red and eyes pink around the edges, tears dribbling and falling over her dirty hand. He cried and screamed and yelled half words his mouth couldn't handle saying, and she had yet to move. How had it all gone so wrong? After one more inhuman shriek that rattled his head, he forced his fist to let go of the dirt. His shaky hand hovered over her face, over her cheek. Her little blush mark wasn't there. It had faded, too afraid to even graze her with his crude fingertips. Too afraid, because that was his doing. That was his fault, his destruction, his cruelty. Too afraid he'd touch her and feel nothing. His shaky hand shivered harder, fingers chiming like a tuning fork. He slapped it back against the dirt and released a rough wail, dropping his head. It was all wrong. He smacked the ground with the heel of his palm. Again, this time with a fist. It was a thud no one but him could hear. Another shriek, this time more scratching and raspy, the cries of her name coupled with apologies mixed into incoherent words that sounded like a dying animal. His forehead came down against dirt. He continued screaming through a painfully stretched throat. He lifted his head only to slam it back down again, his hands coming up and clutching at his hair, pulling. Maybe one day he'd keep screaming until the world turned into a numb void with no meaning or reason or sense. A feather-like touch brushed against the back of his sore hand. That was a tingle, possibly blood running down. But it came again, cold but gentle against his abused hand. He feared lifting his head. It was too much to hope. It already hurt a lot. He couldn't take any more. "I'm sorry," he heard her say. His screams died down. His whirling mind twisted in on itself in an attempt to slow down. "You're not a meanie. I'm sorry I called you that." Slowly, he lifted his head and took a peek. The light of dawn casted low light and painted patchy shadows of trees over the forest floor. Her eye was open just a bit, a small light barely visible under lashes. The faintest glimmer was all the proof he needed. "You, Uraraka." His voice cracked from strain. In pain, she still gave a soft smile. "Sorry I scared you. Don't cry. I'm okay." It took him a full moment of staring to finally snap out of it. His hand had grasped hers, his other hand reached for her face, stopping inches away from her pale cheek. I thought." He started crying again, only without the screaming. "You're back," she said with relief. "I'm so glad." He intended on apologizing some more. Instead, he smeared her hand over his wet face as he began another round of crying that was more airy, his tortured vocal cords being too tired to crack anymore. Ochako thought a lot about what ifs. What if she'd never asked Izuku out? Maybe nothing would have happened. Maybe they'd graduate and grow up and find different partners and settle down in different cities and have children with other people, only seeing each other at work. That was hard to imagine. She was glad she'd asked him out. Couldn't regret it no matter how much she thought about it. He kept talking while carrying her in his arms through the forest. She couldn't exactly make out what he was saying. It didn't matter, she had him back. There was a buzzing inside her head. Nothing she could do about that. At some point, he tried to get her attention by nudging her with his chin, possibly trying to check if she was conscious. A weak, "okay," was all she could offer. He tripped on something and, unwilling to drop her, thudded hard on his knee. He heaved himself up, readjusting her in his arms, saying something about being almost there in a remorseful voice. It was odd to think her momentarily blacking out would be what saved both their lives. He'd assumed he'd killed her. That saved them, but it didn't mean she wasn't sorry. She barely registered that he'd taken them back to the river where they'd landed. He followed the river. It was daylight, much easier to see, when he pushed open the cabin door with his back and walked in. It was dark inside, the only light being from windows and gaps in the wood that allowed for streams of bright yellow sunshine through. He splayed her out on the table, being very gentle when putting her head down. She heard him break a wooden leg off something, then rip up his button-up shirt to splint her arm. Shame. She really liked that shirt. She felt his mouth on her temple, in her hair, saying something she was too tired to understand. And just like that, he was gone. For a while, she wondered where he'd gone, then felt the familiar thud from outside, just on the other side of the wooden wall. He'd jumped somewhere. To where? She wasn't sure. She was just sleepy. A nap was okay. It wasn't the most relaxing nap, injured on a table with breathing difficulties and a migraine. She woke up to being carried past trees again, this time on Izuku's back. She couldn't remember when he'd come back and got her. A gust of wind blew at them from everywhere. She was too dizzy to wonder where this sudden blast could come from in a dense forest. The overhead mechanical humming was what got her to lift her head and actually look around. People, adults. One in a uniform, one in a pro-hero costume. Behind them was a tall structure held up by a wooden skeletal frame, a tower. A lookout tower, no less, and an ugly green jeep. Above was a helicopter with a line dangling from it, the end of the rope strapped onto the pro-hero's harness. She'd only later learned a fire lookout had been startled by the sound of trees being thrown around and had called for backup, unsure of what she was actually seeing through a telescope. Ochako got bundled up and strapped to a stretcher before being wheeled into the helicopter. It was loud, the headset muffled the sound a little. "She'll be okay, buddy," an adult said, she wasn't sure which one. A lot was happening. A lot had happened. Fogging up her oxygen mask with every exhale, she gazed at Izuku from the corner of her eye. He was taking up the last seat available in the cramped helicopter. One of the paramedics had strapped him down with seatbelts. Izuku looked defeated, his eyes hollow, looking down and seeing nothing. She wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that he was a survivor, too. Her body had been physically attacked, his mind had been just as damaged. She wanted to tell him she still loved him, that she didn't mean all the nasty things she said. Her aching lungs couldn't fulfill her wish of speaking. With both of them going through shock, maybe it was better to wait. Izuku saw the arrest on the news. Well, he'd had a hand in the old couple, who called themselves Cupids, getting detained, but seeing them on screen after so long gave him painful flashbacks. His testimony, Ochako's, along with the amusement park security cameras had been enough to have the old couple, who pretended to be oblivious and surprised, as suspects. There was no telling how many crimes they were responsible for. It was hard to tell considering they hardly left any physical evidence behind, except for the audio players. While burnt, multiple investigators with Quirk licenses put their efforts together to collect whatever they could salvage, including one investigator who could see an object's last few days upon contact. They got what they needed. If it weren't for Quirk canceling cuffs, Izuku would have continued overthinking how those two old people would come for him and Ochako again. He'd been hyper-aware of everything at the hospital, getting out of bed and locating Ochako's room a number of times despite doctor's orders. It had been impossible to relax when one villain could open portals and the other had a command quirk. Logically, they couldn't do much to Izuku and Ochako as both quirks were limited. The portal quirk needed the old woman to have visited a particular spot and be able to retain memory of said spot. The "love you to death" command needed two romantically linked targets. Friends and teachers and his mom visited. It all blurred together. Even after being discharged, present time became a smudge of colors to his eyes. Ochako was still recovering in the hospital with injuries that included cracked ribs, a broken arm, internal bleeding and a concussion. Izuku returned to school, but Ochako's desk was still empty. On his first day back in class, among uncomfortably suspicious silence, and friends who didn't know if they should comfort him or give him space or just not look at him in case he needed distance, his homeroom teacher told him to stay after class. The other kids heard and it was like the classroom got vacuum sealed. Izuku didn't have it in him to fit any more emotions. He was at full capacity, had been for a while. "Yes, sir," was all he could say. Kids left one by one, pretending they hadn't almost lost two friends. It was just him and his teacher. Now there was an awkward silence in the classroom. Izuku didn't say anything, sitting in his seat, hugging the ugly yellow backpack to his chest, his thumb playing with the all-might toy Ochako had won for him at the park. How would she look at him once she woke up? Would she even want to look at him at all? He'd traumatized her, no doubt. He wouldn't blame her if she felt like avoiding him. If that would make her feel better, he'd try to keep his distance. Whatever you're thinking, stop it, Shota said with an even voice. Izuku didn't react. Didn't blink. His eyes were getting watery. He'd cry if he blinked. Shota sighed. What happened wasn't your fault. Blaming yourself won't help either of you. But it was his fault. He could have fought harder. He could have done more. He'd visited her bedside only to leave flowers. He'd quickly leave, reluctantly taking in one last look at her. What if she woke up and he was the first thing she saw? Midoriya, look at me, Shota calmly ordered. Squeezing his backpack, he reluctantly raised his head. He blinked and a tear fell. I could've. Uraraka's recovering and so are you. Looking for reasons to blame yourself will get you nowhere. He sniffled. I could have stopped it. No, you couldn't have, Shota said. Those villains were on a killing streak. They'd done this before. You are both children. They aren't. I heard her. They heard both of you. You were stranded and brainwashed. If Uraraka had been the one brainwashed and ordered to go after you, would you blame her? Izuku hugged the bag harder and feverishly shook his head. No, why not? It was a calm question. Because that wouldn't be Uraraka. And do you honestly believe she hadn't already figured out that wasn't your doing? His teacher stayed silent, letting Izuku take it in. If you want someone to blame, blame the villains responsible for this. You did nothing wrong, kid. Now, take the week off. No buts. I can't have you here when you're obviously not ready. Separating logic from anxious what-ifs was difficult. So many bad what-ifs. In the end, he really couldn't do much with what-ifs. The only ifs they had were what they already had. He got her another set of flowers so he could stuff them in the vase by her hospital bedside and immediately leave. Well, he would have left. Instead, he opened the door and got caught off guard when he saw her sitting up in bed, eyes open, staring up at the ceiling, then redirecting at him. She was still in bandages, and her arm was in a sling while her other arm had an IV drip connected to a fluid bag. Recovery girl's visits had healed up the stomach injury alongside the more minor scrapes. Izuku stayed frozen in place with a handful of assorted flowers in another hand on the door handle, ready to close it in case she showed any indication that she didn't want him here. Instead, she broke into a smile as if she wasn't tired at all, her cheeks brightening in color. Deku. She sounded relieved. When he didn't react, she giggled and waved at him to come in. Don't just stand there, silly. Come here. Oh, okay. Nervously, he closed the door behind him and carefully added the newer flowers to the old batch he'd arranged in the vase before. She had an open envelope on the bed with, "Get well soon," cards and letters from classmates sprinkled over the blanket. His own letter was pretty much a 5-page apology he'd spent days and nights fixing. Thanks for the flowers, she said, leaning against the raised bed. Doctor said I was out for a while. He gave a nod. His legs felt like buckling, so he grabbed a chair and plopped down. How do you feel? Little dizzy, and tired, and hungry, she admitted bashfully. What about you? She asked in a more sympathetic tone. Me, he wasn't the one hurt. Why ask him? Yeah, she looked down at her lap. I said really mean things I didn't mean. I thought if I made you hate me then you'd be back to normal. It didn't work. Do you forgive me, Deku? He was crying. God damn it, He was crying all over again. Why couldn't he do anything but cry? I heard you. I should be the one apologizing. Why? He rubbed his eyes with his arm. "'Cause you didn't do anything wrong," she said, like it was a fact. She reached out and pinched his sleeve with the tips of her fingers and pulled his arm away. The IV line dangled. Once she had his arm, she held his hand by the tips of his fingers. "You didn't hurt me. Deku would never hurt me. Someone else hurt us, so don't be sad, okay?" He was an ugly sobbing mess. Uraraka. He rubbed his eyes with the back of his arm. I thought, I tried to stop it. It wasn't enough. I was drowning and I heard you, but my body wasn't my body. I couldn't. You weren't moving. I thought. Quote dot. He sniveled. "I'm so sorry. This wouldn't have happened if I'd just fought harder." "Hey," she called, placing a hand on his arm and gently coaxing him to lower it. They were wrong, you know. The old couple. What they were doing wasn't right. And they shouldn't get to say who should or shouldn't love who. She smiled through her blush. "You're special to me. I like Deku because that's who Deku is." He tried to stifle his sobs. Special. That's what they were. She smiled sweetly and leaned forward. "I want a hug, now." Hard to do so with one arm in a sling and the other holding his hand. Blinded by tears, he wobbly got off the chair and gave one of the most awkward hugs, partially due to lack of experience in giving hugs, and not wanting to accidentally press against her healing arm. It just looked like they were touching each other's shoulders with their heads. "I still want to go on that second date. Is that okay?" She reminded him with a light chuckle. He nodded into her shoulder. Of course, he'd promised her that he'd figure something out, and maybe finally answer the question, "What are we?" He'd need to compile all emotions into one answer. He wasn't sure what words to use. Only, "I love you," made the most sense. She was his partner on campus, and now, anywhere. Special. That's what they were. What ifs be damned. Where stories live. Discover now.